I could.
Oh, okay, for the Florida.
Yeah.
All right, since we haven't been around for a while, let's review the whole evil section again. We'll go really quick until we get back to where we were when we left off. Just to get us back focused in our study, the main point of the first half of our study has been about passive faith, and we define that. So remember, we're answering the question, or we're confirming that everything is going to be okay, and what receives it is your passive faith, not your active faith, but your passive faith. Hopefully we got that all straightened out. But then the other aspect of it is to really look at evil. And what I'm going to do here is try to develop and show you that Buzz Lightyear is absolutely correct, that evil never wins. And he's my favorite theologian because of that statement alone. And when we find out and define what evil really is, and then we can understand what it is that, and this is a very logical side of things, a lot of apologetics involved in defining what evil is and what it isn't. And then we can take that understanding of what evil is and recognize that it is actually self-defeating, and God himself, what he does to make sure it's self-defeating happens, and that passive faith is once again rekindled or reinforced because of it. All right? Remember, we're answering that question. And we talked about the antecedent versus the consequential will. Remember what that was? Antecedent, the original or the primary, that which began. So the antecedent will of God is the will that God has always had, right? Does God need a consequential will when we have not fallen into sin yet? Did he need a consequential will on day 2 or 3 or even before he created? No. The antecedent will is the one that he's always had, or his primary. And so if you come to the realization that God's antecedent will has everything to do with love, then from the perspective of my sinful nature, I also know that that has everything to do with also mercy. And that's why we say that the primary will of God is love. The primary will of God is mercy. Those of you who were with me in our Isaiah study, we came to that conclusion, didn't we? Why I had to call. Let me turn it on. All right. So, what was I saying?
Isaiah.
Oh yeah, Isaiah, we have that we come to the conclusion that the righteousness of God happens in mercy and in wrath or judgment, right? It has to. The judgment has to do with consequential will. So a response to our sin, there must now be a consequential will. And consequences to sin has to be paid for, right? Even those of us who receive mercy from Jesus receive it because he paid for it for us, his substitutionary atonement, right? So you see how that works? Antecedent is will, love, mercy. That's what we rely on. That's what our passive faith relies on, by the way. His primary antecedent will. And so for you who are redeemed, who has faith, has his passive faith, you receive that and you know that his will for you is mercy for your sins. Okay? And that's what we concluded with Isaiah as well. But the consequential will happens because there is sin. So consequently, there must be wrath. Consequently, in order for you to be saved, there must be wrath put upon the Son of God in your place. See how that works? So you can never say that God is wrathful and mean because he wants to be mean. No. And you can't also say going to hell is unfair when he sent his only Son there to atone for the sins of the world. You see how that works? You can't jump to that. And you're already starting to define what evil isn't and what God is in conclusion with it. You start already defining, by me saying that, I'm already defining evil by me saying that. And I'll just say that right now. It just came to my head right now. And that is that if I suggest that God is evil for sending people to hell, that in and of itself is evil. And you can prove that by defining what evil is. Okay? And that's where we will go with this. So it's good to know that evil is self-defeating. Isn't that right? To know that you're part of God and God has redeemed you, and to know that the evil around you and all the evil that Satan musters up, evil itself is self-defeating. It can't win. Alright? That's cool. That's all part of what my faith receives. Okay? So we have that understanding, and then I went ahead and threw this dimension thing at us again, just to remember, 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, you understand, right? You sit in the 3rd dimension, so you understand the 3rd dimension, 2 dimension, and 1 dimension. 4, you don't. Remember, always remember that aspect of what we're talking about here. I have a passive faith. There's things I don't understand because they're beyond me. And we watched that video, didn't we, with Dr. Werner Gitt, who explained it, I thought, phenomenally. I don't know how you guys felt about that video, but he really showed how that works. All right? So, and here's the theme here. God's righteousness, we know, and don't keep this planted in your head. What is right, God's righteousness has to come in mercy and in judgment. Both of those two. And judgment, let's talk about that. Looks like Sodom and Gomorrah maybe, or the apocalypse. And mercy, my chains are broken free because I have forgiveness. And in the middle, you have both of them here. This picture depicts both the wrath or judgment and the what? Mercy in the person of Jesus Christ. They both exist with Him. Then we went on to 1 Peter 3. We just got to move past that because I don't want to get too much into the weeds. All right, so then we talked about what is good, right? And we went to the Hebrew word for good, which is tov. And hopefully we remember that I explained the word tov means in harmony with God. Therefore, it can dwell with God. So it's more than just good as, when we think of good and bad, you think of doing, say, a good act to somebody, being kind to them or whatever. The word tov in the Hebrew really means in harmony with God. So when we went to creation, Genesis chapter 1, and that's the word that is used for, and there this day, and it was what? Good. Day 1, 2, 3, all the way, and at the end, God looks at His creation, and it was very tov. What's being said there is God is intentionally creating, and in His intentionality of creating, it's in harmony with Him. Okay? So it means more than just a good act. It even means more than there was no sin. It means that when God created, it is in harmony with His very being. Alright? So when you get to the pinnacle of chapter 1, and God makes us in His image and in His likeness, and that kind of term is attached to what is good when He creates you and me, this should blow our minds. He creates you and me so that we are in His image, in His likeness, in such a harmony with God, His greatest creation. All right? It's really good because now I have a relationship with God. All right? That's the understanding of good. So we have to remember that it's in harmony with God. If it's not good, then it's not in harmony with God. All right? All right. And in contrast to harmony with God, the exact opposite or contrast of harmony would be what? Loneliness. We were not created to be apart from the harmony of God. We were not even created to be apart in harmony with each other. It was good when we had, well, I guess I'm jumping the gun here. Right here, Genesis chapter 2. God creates Adam, right? And God uses the same word, tov, but now in a negative way, when He says, it is not good for it is not tov, and so we can say, it is not proper harmony for the man, Adam, to be alone, because loneliness is the opposite. So being alone, that's why we understand that if you find somebody who's lonely, is there anything sadder than that? Is there anything sadder than somebody who's lonely? You know what it's like to be lonely. Every one of us has been in situations where we're lonely. But some stories of loneliness can break your heart. Because we're not meant to be a hermit. We're not meant to be on our own, good and tov. We're supposed to be in harmony with God, and we're supposed to be in harmony with each other. So before there's any sin, before evil even exists, this is the important part. You have to make that segregation. We're not talking about sin right now. We're talking about the makeup of what is good, what is tov, what is in harmony with God. How is the harmony between humanity and God going to look like? All right? Well, God makes Adam and says it's not tov, in harmony, for him to be alone. And so what will I do? I will make a helper suitable for him so that there will now be harmony between him and her. And lo and behold, when Eve is created, what is that the beginning of?
Marriage.
Marriage, first off, yes, but it goes so much deeper than that. I mean, that is what we use for the context of marriage, yes, you're absolutely correct. But it is the beginning of the what? In what way? In what way?
Is it a fuller reflection of God's true nature? Because God himself is relational.
That's right, it's
Father,
Trinitarian,
Son, and-
it's a
okay.
reflection of Trinity, yeah. But we always remember, why do we refer to the church as a her? Why does it always get the feminine and not the masculine? Because when Eve was created, it was the beginning of the church. The fellowship within the church. Okay? So it was not good for man to not have the church. There was no harmony between humanity. Alright? This is why God doesn't create, and to your point with Trinity, God doesn't create us like Cabbage Patch dolls. Do you remember that? Where the Cabbage Patch doll, we pulled them out like a bunch of carrots out of the ground or what have you. They're individual. That's not how it works. God creates man from the man, creates Eve from the rib, and the two come together and create the third person, and away we go. Procreation within the church. So when Eve is created, it's the beginning of the church. When sin comes, it's the breaking up of the church and our relationship with God, and nothing's tov anymore. Okay? And that's the birth of evil. Right away, evil is in the mix of the whole thing. So hopefully we begin to understand that evil is all about the disharmony that God, what? Created and desires from his antecedent will. See how this is working? All right? Now everything's good, right? I will make a helper suitable, and to your point, Sandy, yeah, it's the first marriage, and away we go. God's whole desire for all of us who are human beings, we stand here today, and it would now start with the procreation, starting with Adam and Eve. All part of his will. Any questions up to this point? This is all reviewed, isn't it? Okay. So, the creation of Eve from a rib became the birth of the church. Now you understand why we call it she, her, the church. Fellowship that was tov, or a harmony within humanity that was in harmony with the Trinity. And yes, it's a reflection of the Trinity, absolutely. And 1 Corinthians 12, you are the body of Christ. Each one of you is a part of it. We are the body of Christ. And that's when Paul talks about a very practical, very pragmatic way in which to say we're all part of this one body. Christ is the head, we're all the parts. He even talks about there are parts that are not necessarily all that what? Flattering. But they're just as essential as the other parts. See, we all work as one. Alright? So, here's the sad news. You and I do not experience, we have never experienced in our life true harmony. Never. You were conceived in the sin of chapter 3, right? Your parents gave you the sin from the beginning, so you and I do not know life apart from evil. We don't. We don't even know what it feels like. All right? Here is the bad news. You have never experienced the true harmony. All right? And there's all your things. Husband and wife fighting, people creating different gods that are just a reflection of humanity. Every one of them are. God in the middle, crying about that war. All right? This one right here is just the kind of the ingredients of evil. It's always based on power, so we betray, we lust, we have jealousy, loneliness, and deception. So therefore, the Christian always struggles with knowing the morality of God is best. And we did this one, didn't we? Romans chapter 7. That's why, as a Christian, as a redeemed child of God, your experience is just the same as Paul when he says, you know what? I know I want to do good, but what? Evil's right there with me. And this is describing simultaneously sinner sinned. Simio justus et peccare I like to say that one in the Latin, when you learn your Latin terms. He knows that the only thing at the end of it, he says, who's going to deliver me from this simultaneously sinful and purified nature? Only through Christ our Lord. So there's the struggle you and I have. And by the way, since we have that struggle in all of us, this is what brings about the doubt. This is what brings about the boredom of your Christian faith. The fact that you can't handle it on your own, all these things. It brings about all the negativity in your faith. And which causes you what? To not believe everything is going to be okay. Right? Yes.
That he always referred to it as sinful way, not evil way.
Right.
And you talk about evil and sinful. I guess if you say I'm sinful, I would have to agree. But if you say I'm evil, I wouldn't like that.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll start saying evil.
Well, I'm just, is there a difference?
Not really. You might want to make a distinction between where that started. You might say, well, Satan was evil to hand it over to us, but it's really the same lie that we all carry forth. It is all evil. I think with what we're studying, it's synonymous with one another. Okay? And always remember that the central aspect of our sin is our pride. Okay? Because our pride doesn't want to our pride does not like the idea of harmony, does it? It's always selfish. It's selfishness. Evil is selfish. Okay? Any other questions? All right? Then, I hope you got this part. This was a little bit when I started getting into economics, right? Because I defined economics for you last time around. The reality now is what? The yin and the yang. All right? Human solutions, here's where we really struggle as human beings, because human solutions to our dilemma is always a yin-yang. Be it religions, economies, remedies, two people in a counseling office will always include the dark side in this world for a solution. The worst thing we can do is to normalize and promote this as a final say. Do you remember this part? This is so extremely important, but it's very hard to define. I hope we did that. In other words, if let's take it. Last time we talked about socialism versus capitalism, right? And who would not agree with me that regardless of which one you hold to as the right solution for humanity, for our will, or for our being, that there isn't greed in any of them? Is there greed in both of them? Yeah. Is there going to be an outcome in which human nature still going to come out in a negative way? The answer is yes. So I'm a socialist, let's say, and I'm not. I'm just saying, if I'm a socialist, I'm believing if you just distribute everything equally, then everything is going to be okay. And my gripe about capitalism is, in capitalism, you got those people who invent, and they got a good idea, they can sell it, and if people buy it, they get filthy rich, and that's not fair. And therefore, there shouldn't be the very rich and the very poor, all right? So there's yin-yang involved in there, and we have to agree with that. Although you may say, yes, but capitalism, this is what I would say, yes, but capitalism is the best thing that works given our human nature. Because I'll turn around and say, you might have all the well-intentions of the world, and you want to distribute everything equally, right? But I'm going to tell you that if you do that, and you find that individual or government or whatever that has the power to distribute that stuff equally, where is the greed going to go? To the person who's doing the distributing, and I can tell you that we have a whole entire history of that happening in the human race. And I give you example over example. So I will say to you, now I'm just going to go, socialism would destroy America, and I'm right. Let's not have a debate over it, but at the same time, you can turn around and say, there's yin-yang in there, buddy, because you're going to develop corporations, and there's going to be what? And within those corporations, there's going to be greed. There's going to be labor disputes, the whole ball of wax. And you can't tell me that one side is perfectly right and the other one isn't, right? But there's greed involved, okay? So this is how we operate. This is my point. This is the only thing I know. This is how I experience life. Man and a woman, husband and wife, go into a counseling, all right? So they go into counseling, and they get together. Let's say it's a Christian counselor. So the Christian counselor will say things that are very Christ-like and say, you need to do this as a Christian, husband and wife. But I'll guarantee you, in the practical aspects of what's being delivered to that couple, there will be in it a mix of where they must what? Some way, shape, or form, compromise. And that compromise is going to have in it, from each person's perspective, a yin-yang. I don't think that's fair. Yeah, but it's really important for her. So maybe you ought to do that for her in order to what? Save your marriage. And turn around and the wife can say the same thing. All right? So there still is, because of our human condition, a yin-yang. And what is yin-yang again? The belief that the good and the evil need each other in order for the thing to occur. And if you're in a religious thing, now this yin-yang actually comes from Eastern religion, doesn't it? And if you were to investigate yin-yang, it's actually believed that in this universe there is the forces of good and there's the forces of evil. And the evil needs the good and the good needs the evil. The good needs the evil to be good. And so both of things are necessary. Both of them have value in order for the thing to work. Is this true or false when it comes to salvation or God and His antecedent will? False. And if we apply any of this to our salvation, not how we're going to run our country or make the marriage work in a practical way, when we're talking about salvation where everything returns to the tov, the harmony with God, there is no such thing as good needing evil for anything. Because at the beginning, the antecedent will of God is that everything be what? In harmony with Him, and everything that is good means there is no evil whatsoever. right? See how that works? So, in order for there to be a middle class in the United States of America, we need to promote capitalism. All right, good. Are there good and bad things about capitalism? Yes. In order for the world to reach nirvana, there must be a balance of good and evil. To reach the utopia every human being is looking for, there must be yin-yang. True or false?
How is that possible?
That's false.
In the world, but not in God's.
That's right. That's right.
But even the world, by definition, you can't have utopia if you're having both.
There are some who believe you do. There are those who believe in yin-yang that actually has to happen. So there's a belief that both of them are necessary. And the reason why people conclude with that, even in religion, is that that's how it works in our evil world.
But who defines utopia that way?
A lot of religions do.
As experience?
All religions, except for Christianity, does. I would suggest.
It seems like we're all, our society is interested in the absence of pain or any struggle.
Right.
And so they would define utopia, at least here, as
Right.
the absence of that, which is direct, which then could not include evil, because that's what causes pain and struggle with those things.
Right. Yeah.
So it
But
seems
look
we're not
at
used
the
to it.
defining religions themselves, you know. I guess in the end, you might say that in the end, although they don't define it that way, like it's when somebody reaches absolute, like a Hindu reaches one with the absolute, you look at how they define things and they work the thing out where there's a cooperation between the two in order for what is right to be right. You disagree?
No, I'm not disagreeing with what they believe, I just can't, I don't have any place for it. I'm just
No,
disagreeing.
and it shouldn't be, okay? And just to give them as much credit as I can, I guess, okay, you know, it's interesting that even the Muslim who says, in the end, let's say the radical Muslim that says we have to get rid of the infidel, and they would be told that you can go ahead and lie if it's for the greater good. And you definitely, if you're part of this thing where we need to become terrorists and kill the infidel, those evil acts of yours is actually good. And by the way, your utopia, your heaven, your bliss will be what? Reward. How is the reward? You're 70 what? 70 virgins. It's a very carnal reward, isn't it?
But there'll be a lot more women in heaven than men.
There has to be if every man has, right? Right. Which is actually very opposite of what they teach.
I know.
Really?
Yeah. So, but here's the point. I guess if you remember, what I'm trying to do is saying that the world always suggests, in every pragmatic or practical way, is you have to have the good and evil, man. I'm a businessman, and I have to make those bad dealings in order to what? You know, we have to do it. I have to do the cutthroat thing because, right? Before I was a pastor, I was a financial planner for 7 years at the Prudential. Let me tell you, I was in a room with about 50 other guys, and it was cutthroat. And the managers were, you do what you got to do to bring the money in, you know. And sometimes even within the agency, I remember one time I had an agent, and one guy undercut me, and I went to him, and he was going to give me 20%. I said, wait a minute, this is my, you know. But, you know, the manager was saying, well, he got the business, okay, you know. And it's just, those of you who are in business, you understand that, don't you? When you're in the world, that's how it works, and people start to justify it, right?
So, but you're saying that from a human perspective, our society has to have this?
That's how we all operate. No, we don't have to have evil, but since evil exists, this is how we operate.
But then you introduce Christianity.
Right. And that's what I'm going to do. But what I'm saying is that we don't, we live.
Because you're not
practically speaking-
endorsing this at all as
I'm
being
not
a-
endorsing it, I'm just saying this is your reality.
It's almost like the sinfulness is so great we can't live without it.
Yes. But we can, and that's salvation.
Right.
Right, that's exactly right.
I think what is it's like often that Christianity isn't logical or somehow we have to rely on, like we are able to reason, and yet the reality of, that's where I keep coming up against utopia, as most people wouldn't think about it, would think of the absence of all these bad things. But the reality is, that's not even how their religions would define it. Is that making sense? Like their own reasoning, I would say, it falls apart. But I think Christians are often accused of being illogical or tossing reason and intellect to the wind, and yet looking at this, it's like.
It's how I have to operate. Case in point, we just came from New Hampshire. Okay? When I'm with Ben and Mom's not around, or I'm with Brian, we'll put the music on. All right? And we were driving along, and Carla just doesn't like my music. She doesn't. Classic rock, I want to put that on, and when I'm driving, I'd love to listen to it. So 90% of the time, I decide not to have any music. All right? Now, there came a point where we got in a traffic jam. There was a 50-car pileup, and we were, thank God, behind it. But all of a sudden, huh?
Monday, I heard on Rick.
On Tuesday.
There was
Yesterday.
50 cars.
Yeah,
I
that's
heard
right.
on
50-car
TV.
pileup on 80, and they had to shut it down, so they were forcing all of us into one, and anyway, it was a mess. And I had missed I'll make this long story short. I could have made another option. I knew the other two were mad at me because I didn't take that option. I started getting mad at myself. And I was sitting there and seething, and I was just saying, babe, it's okay. And I was doing all the Christian things like pray for the people who got the acid. They're in much worse shape than you are. And this is like Paul. Yeah, I know what the good thing is, but boy, I feel I gotta get home. I still have another 6 hours of driving, right? I put on my music. And I know Carlo, I know that look. I turned it on, I cranked it, and I was seething. And everybody was quiet. But all of a sudden I had to have that. Now, the point is, I usually sacrifice that because I don't want to hear it. All right? Don't call me virtuous. I don't do it because I don't want to hear her complaint. So this is a yin yang. I would suggest her complaint is selfish. She thinks, see where I'm going with this?